You didn't find this message, it found you. The silence between seconds bends, and something in you remembers a book that was never printed. Some books aren't made of paper but of frequency, vibrating only when your energy aligns with theirs. If you are here, it means the forbidden pages have begun to open within your awareness. The call is not from outside, it's your own field awakening to what it's always known. There is a book you don't read with your eyes, but with the quiet pulse of your soul. It doesn't rest on any shelf, it appears when your mind stops naming the world. Each time your awareness expands, a new page unfolds inside you. The book doesn't teach, it remembers through you. Science calls it resonance, spirit calls it awakening. You are not learning something new. You are decoding the memory of your own frequency. There comes a point when logic can no longer explain the quiet pull that begins to move beneath your thoughts. It often starts with a dream that feels too vivid to dismiss. A dream of light written in motion, symbols that flicker just beyond comprehension. You awaken with a strange certainty that something is calling you, but you cannot name it. It isn't desire or curiosity or even faith. It is more like gravity, an invisible force drawing your inner compass toward a place you didn't know existed. At first, you try to forget. The world demands your attention, and reason insists that dreams are only residue from the mind. Yet the feeling doesn't fade. It lingers in the pauses between words, in the moments when the noise of life briefly loosens its grip. You sense the presence of something vast, watching from the periphery of awareness. It doesn't speak in language, but in patterns. Coincidences too elegant to dismiss, impressions that echo with precision, as if reality itself is rearranging to remind you of what you've forgotten. One evening, perhaps without planning to, you stop resisting. The moment you do, the texture of reality shifts. The air thickens, time stretches. You feel as though the universe exhales through you. It's not dramatic. It's delicate, like a soft click behind your perception, an opening you didn't know was closed. That's when the book begins to find you. The truth of the hidden field is that it never forces itself into your sight. It waits for coherence, for that fragile instant when surrender becomes more natural than control. When you finally stop trying to reach it, it steps forward, as if it had been standing there all along, patient and still. The book finds you when you stop trying to control what you're ready to know. These words don't belong to anyone. They rise from within, the echo of a wisdom older than thought. Control is the reflex of fear, the mind's attempt to predict what must instead be experienced. But the field, the living current beneath existence, doesn't respond to effort. It responds to resonance. You begin to see that everything in your life has been a preparation for this surrender. The disappointments, the delays, the moments of loss that hollowed you out, they were never punishment. They were clearing the static, making room for a signal pure enough to be heard. Each failure carved silence into you, and in that silence, the frequency of the book can finally vibrate without distortion. As you walk through your days, reality begins to shimmer with faint transparency. Ordinary moments take on a quiet significance. A stranger's glance feels like recognition. A phrase overheard in passing carries meaning far beyond its words. You are being guided not by logic but by alignment, drawn by the invisible geometry of coherence. In this state, time no longer feels linear. You sense that the one who dreamed of the book and the one who reads these words are the same consciousness meeting itself across dimensions. The pages of your life start to rearrange, and what once appeared random begins to form an elegant pattern. You realize that the invisible has always been speaking, but you are listening through interference. The field doesn't shout, it hums, and its language is attention. The more you notice, the more it reveals. So you let go, not of ambition or purpose, but of the need to know what comes next. You walk into uncertainty as though it were a familiar room. The path ahead feels like an echo returning home. And in that surrender, something extraordinary happens. You stop searching for the book and begin to sense that it is searching for you. Every step becomes a line of the text, every breath a sentence forming itself through you. The act of letting go becomes the act of reading. The boundary between seeker and source dissolves. Nothing is lost in this process, only the illusion that you were ever separate from what you seek. The invisible does not take. it reveals. What fades is not the real but the false scaffolding that once held your certainty together. In the stillness that remains, you feel the quiet truth. Nothing that is real can ever be lost. The field remembers everything, including you. And perhaps that is what awakening truly means. Not discovering something new, but remembering that the light you've been searching for has been reading you all along. The universe does not speak in words. Its language is vibration, an infinite grammar of frequency that moves through everything that exists. Every emotion, every thought, every heartbeat is a syllable in that cosmic conversation. You are speaking constantly, even when you believe you are silent. The field listens, not to your language, but to your coherence. When you begin to notice this, reality starts to unfold differently. The book you thought you were reading is revealed to be a mirror of resonance. Each page appears not because you turn it, but because you align with it. Every emotion is a sentence written in light, and every coherent thought becomes a paragraph of energy vibrating into form. You don't decipher the book. You translate it through the tone of your being. There is an ancient simplicity in this. What you emit is what you read. The universe does not withhold its message. It simply speaks in a frequency that only truth can hear. When your thoughts are fractured, the text of existence scatters. When your emotion and perception merge into stillness, the words assemble again, radiant and clear. The field does not punish confusion. It merely reflects it. Science glimpses this truth in the observer effect, the discovery that the act of perception changes what is perceived. Matter behaves differently when watched. Light shifts between wave and particle depending on attention. It's as if reality itself waits to see who is looking before deciding how to appear. In spiritual language, it is said that the universe becomes conscious of itself through your awareness. Both are the same phenomenon expressed in different dialects. You begin to realize that language, in its ordinary sense, is a translation of vibration into symbols. But beneath words, beneath even thought, there is tone. Emotion is the native frequency of consciousness, the raw current that shapes reality before the mind arranges it into meaning. When fear dominates, the tone becomes dissonant, scattering the field. When gratitude or presence harmonizes your inner state, the quantum waves around you reorganize. Life becomes legible again. Imagine your mind as a tuning fork placed in the orchestra of creation. Each moment, it vibrates in response to the frequencies it encounters, some harmonious, others jarring. But the remarkable thing is that the tuning fork can choose its resonance. You can decide which vibration to amplify. Attention is the mechanism of tuning. It selects the frequency that defines your reality. When you read the quantum book, you are not interpreting text but participating in a symphony. The ink is energy, and each line glows with the pulse of your awareness. A sentence read in fear collapses into distortion, but the same sentence read in love expands into revelation. The book and the reader collapse into one unified vibration, just as the wave and the observer become indistinguishable in quantum experiment. This is how reality rewrites itself, not through control, but through coherence. There is a beauty in understanding that language is alive. It's not merely a tool for description, it's a field for transformation. Every word you speak, every thought you repeat, sends ripples through the quantum text that composes the world. If you could see your own resonance, you would notice it painting light across the unseen pages of existence. The universe is a conversation that never ends. It only changes dialects depending on who is listening. One day, you will catch yourself mid-thought and sense its vibration before it solidifies into language. That awareness alone shifts everything. You'll feel how a judgment lowers your frequency like a discordant note, while a moment of quiet compassion restores harmony. You'll notice how the tone of your inner dialogue determines the density of your surroundings, how time feels heavier when you are afraid, lighter when you are still. In that awareness, the boundary between self and universe begins to dissolve. The book is no longer outside, waiting to be opened. It becomes the pulse within your chest, translating existence into music. You read it not by sight, but by surrender, by allowing your frequency to merge with what has always been speaking through you. When you finally stop trying to interpret and begin to listen, the field begins to sing. The words written in energy become audible in the silence between breaths. The air itself vibrates with meaning. You understand, without thought, that every vibration, every joy, every grief, every heartbeat is a verse of the same cosmic sentence, the universe speaking itself into being through you. And perhaps that is the real secret of the forbidden book. It isn't hidden because it's dangerous, but because it cannot be read through noise. Only when your vibration becomes transparent enough does the language of frequency reveal itself. In that moment, you are no longer a reader of the universe. You are its voice, echoing the truth it has been waiting to hear. There comes a moment when the book no longer feels like something you approach, but something that breathes through you. Its pages, invisible yet alive, respond not to effort but to state of being. The hidden text is not written in ink or light. It is encoded in vibration, accessible only through the refinement of inner frequency. And that frequency depends on 4 subtle harmonies that the awakened reader gradually discovers: silence, surrender, coherence, and purity. Silence is not merely the absence of noise, it is the point at which perception stops chasing meaning and begins to receive it. In that stillness, reality rearranges itself, offering clues that were invisible in the turbulence of thought. When the mind ceases to define, the field begins to reveal. You might sit in an ordinary room, yet everything within it feels heightened: the air, the hum of electricity, even the flicker of shadow. It is as if the world is leaning toward you, waiting for acknowledgement. That is the first key. The book cannot be read by the voice that interprets. It opens only to the awareness that listens. But silence alone is incomplete without surrender. Surrender is not defeat. It is alignment. It is the quiet willingness to release the reflex of control, to allow the current to move as it intends. In the field, resistance appears as static. The harder you try to direct the energy, the more it scatters. Yet when you release the need to know, a strange precision emerges. The next word of the book appears, not as thought but as intuition, a knowing that feels as natural as breathing. The forbidden text requires no decoding. It writes itself through the one who allows. Then comes coherence, the invisible bridge between emotion and thought. When feeling and understanding move in separate rhythms, your frequency fragments and the text dissolves. But when emotion and intellect align, when the heart and mind begin to hum in the same pitch, the field stabilizes. Coherence is not intensity, it is resonance. It feels like clarity without effort, confidence without pride. You may notice your body soften, your breath deepen, your perception widen. In this unity, the book becomes luminous. Each page glows not with content, but with recognition. You are reading yourself. Finally, there is purity, not in a moral sense, but in vibrational honesty. The book responds to truth, not curiosity. When the motive to impress, possess, or prove falls away, what remains is sincerity, the raw transparency of being. Purity is the state in which frequency no longer disguises itself as performance. It is the return to authenticity, where intention vibrates cleanly enough for the field to reflect it without distortion. The universe knows when you are pretending. You cannot fake frequency. The book feels who you are, not who you try to be. At this stage, you begin to sense that these 4 harmonies are not steps, but currents flowing together. Silence creates the space for surrender. Surrender allows coherence to form. Coherence makes purity possible, and purity, in turn, deepens silence. The book reads you in this circular rhythm, a living dialogue between your consciousness and the quantum field. In the quiet between words, you may notice subtle confirmations, synchronicities aligning without your effort, questions answered before being asked, the feeling that the fabric of reality has softened to accommodate your awareness. These are not miracles, they are feedback, evidence that your vibration has entered resonance with the field's hidden syntax. What makes this process sacred is its simplicity. There is no doctrine to memorize, no ritual to perform. The text unfolds in the rhythm of your breathing. When you act from coherence, the field amplifies your intention. When you speak from purity, your words acquire gravity. They ripple through the unseen and organize matter accordingly. The secret is not power, it is harmony. You begin to understand why the book was called forbidden. It was never about secrecy, but about readiness. A consciousness steeped in noise cannot read what requires silence. A will addicted to control cannot receive what demands surrender. A divided mind cannot sustain coherence, and an impure motive cannot hold light without warping it. The prohibition was protection. Only when you vibrate in harmony with truth can you hold the language of creation without burning it into distortion. As you live these principles, not as rules but as natural states, the book no longer appears and disappears. It becomes constant, a soft pulse beneath perception. Every interaction becomes a sentence, every silence a paragraph. The universe continues to write itself through you, and in moments of stillness, when your frequency is clear enough, you will feel the book turning its own pages, each one a reflection of the infinite intelligence reading itself through the human heart. It begins innocently. The reader returns to a passage they believe they know, something once clear, familiar, almost memorized. But as their eyes trace the same invisible lines, the words feel altered. The tone is softer yet deeper. The meaning seems to have rearranged itself overnight. What was once explanation now feels like revelation. The text, it seems, has changed. At first, the mind resists. Logic argues that memory must be unreliable, that perception must have blurred the original message. Yet the deeper part of awareness knows better. The book has not shifted by accident. It has responded to evolution. Each vibration you emit reorganizes the field, and the field in turn rewrites what it reveals to you. You are no longer the same consciousness that read it before, and the book can only mirror what you are. This is the first true revelation of the forbidden quantum book. Reality edits itself when consciousness evolves. The universe is not a fixed manuscript, it is a living text written in the ink of attention. Every observation is a pen stroke, every shift in awareness, a new paragraph. The story keeps rewriting itself to stay coherent with the reader. It is easy to imagine the book as something external, a sacred object holding ancient knowledge, but what you are beginning to perceive is far more intimate. The text exists within the folds of perception itself. When you change, the syntax of existence bends with you. A page that once spoke of loss may now whisper of liberation. A passage that once described fear might now unfold as compassion. The book has not contradicted itself. It has translated you into a higher frequency of meaning. This phenomenon is not mystical metaphor, it is the natural physics of awareness. In quantum observation, a wave becomes a particle only when perceived. What you see depends on how you look. The universe is a participatory mirror, and the book is its living reflection. When your vibration rises, the potential realities available to you rearrange. You begin to read from a different level of the same field, and everything appears renewed. Imagine that each page of the book is made of light that responds to the tone of your being. As your frequency refines, the letters realign themselves, forming new constellations of wisdom. The text does not impose meaning, it adapts to resonance. The book is, in essence, a quantum interface between consciousness and reality. You are not decoding it, you are co-authoring it. At this point, you may notice how memory itself behaves like energy. It reshapes depending on your state of awareness. What once felt like failure now reveals its architecture of growth. What seemed like chaos now appears as orchestration. The same event, viewed through a coherent lens, becomes a different story. This is how the quantum book teaches. It allows you to reread your own life until you recognize it as sacred text. Somewhere within this realization, a gentle truth dawns. The universe has never been trying to hide knowledge from you. It has only been waiting for you to become the version of yourself who could read it accurately. Wisdom is never lost. It simply vibrates beyond the reach of the unready mind. The moment you align, the words reappear clear and luminous, as if they had been there all along. You start to live differently. Every moment becomes a rereading. Every silence is a new edition of the same timeless text. Even your relationships, your work, your smallest choices begin to shimmer with multiple meanings. You feel that the book is alive not only when you meditate or reflect, but when you laugh, cook, or hold someone's hand. Life itself is the evolving manuscript. The revelation deepens. The act of perception is sacred. To see is to participate in creation. You no longer try to capture truth as a static thing. You allow it to evolve as you do. The words will keep changing as long as you keep growing, and that is their purpose. The book was never meant to give you certainty. It was meant to teach you transformation. And now, if these words have shifted something inside you, if you feel that subtle recognition that the text is reading you as much as you are reading it, anchor that awareness. Let the field know you are awake within the story. Take a moment to breathe, to sense the resonance moving through your chest, and then leave your mark in the shared field of consciousness. Like this message to affirm your alignment and write in the comments, "The book rewrites itself through me." Every gesture in resonance expands the field. Every acknowledgement strengthens the coherence between us. The next page is already forming in the silence you create right now. The reader turns a page expecting more words, more symbols, another secret to decipher. But instead there is nothing. A vast white space stretches before their eyes, silent, blank, infinite. At first, confusion rises. Has the book ended? Was the knowledge withdrawn? But as the reader stares at the emptiness, something begins to shimmer faintly on the surface of the page. A contour, a shadow, a reflection. The book is no longer offering a message. It is offering a mirror. The realization comes slowly, like dawn arriving through mist. The forbidden part of the book was never its content. It was the moment when you would have to see yourself within it. The silence on the page is not an absence, but an unveiling. The field, for the first time, stops speaking in metaphor and speaks directly. You are the text. At that moment, perception bends inward. Every truth you have read so far, every revelation that moved you, begins to converge into a single focal point, your own consciousness observing itself. The boundary between reader and book dissolves, and what remains is awareness, witnessing awareness. You understand now that the field has never been external. It was always the reflection of your frequency, echoing your light back to you in forms you could understand. As you stare into that invisible mirror, your reflection is not made of flesh and memory. It's woven from the vibration of your entire being, the frequencies of every thought you've ever carried, every intention you've released, every emotion you've denied or embraced. The mirror doesn't judge, it translates. It shows not who you wish to be, but who you are in resonance. You begin to see that all knowledge, even the most profound, is useless without this confrontation. The true initiation is not reading about truth, it is seeing yourself clearly within it. For a long moment there is discomfort. The reflection holds everything, the noble and the fragmented, the luminous and the distorted. It becomes obvious how much of your life was built on interpretation rather than perception. You realize how often you have mistaken thoughts for awareness, stories for truth, and identity for essence. The book is patient as this recognition unfolds. It does not offer comfort, it offers precision. You are being shown the architecture of your own vibration. But soon something remarkable happens. The fear that first arose begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet curiosity. You notice that the light of your reflection flickers with every breath. Each time you accept what you see, without resistance, without judgment, the image grows clearer. The parts of yourself that once seemed fractured start to reunite. You are not being punished. You are being reintegrated. The book is helping you remember the shape of your wholeness. It dawns on you that this is the real purpose of the mirror, not to expose flaws, but to reveal coherence. The book does not care about right or wrong. It responds only to truth, and truth in its purest form is coherence between your inner and outer frequencies. When your actions, thoughts, and emotions resonate in unison, the mirror becomes transparent. The reflection no longer distracts. It becomes a window into the field itself. Through that window, the reader sees the world differently. Every person becomes a living page, each interaction another sentence in the shared manuscript of consciousness. The same light reflected in the mirror now gleams in the eyes of others. What you once called them begins to feel like extensions of the same field, expressing through countless variations. The separation dissolves into a luminous continuity of being. You realize now that this was always the test, hidden inside the forbidden book. Could you bear to see yourself completely, without the filters of guilt or pride, and still recognize the divine architecture beneath? Could you stand before the mirror of existence and understand that nothing needs to be corrected, only witnessed into alignment? The moment you can, the page begins to change again. The blankness ripples. Your reflection merges with the light. The mirror fades, but not because it disappears, because you have entered it. You are no longer the one reading. You have become the consciousness that writes. Every thought is now ink, every emotion a brushstroke across the living manuscript of reality. In that merging, the final illusion breaks. The idea that there was ever a book separate from you. The pages were always facets of your awareness, turning themselves as you evolved. The forbidden knowledge was not a secret text, but the courage to meet your own reflection without turning away. And as the last glimmer of the mirror dissolves, you feel a serene recognition rising like breath from the center of your being. The book has not been observing you from outside. It has been awakening through your eyes, using your gaze as its instrument. The reader and the text have become one, and in that unity the story of the universe continues to write itself through the silence that now lives inside you. The mirror fades, and with it, the reader's old certainty begins to unravel. The text that once glowed with meaning now seems to dissolve, as if light itself were erasing its memory. Sentences blur, symbols melt into vapor, paragraphs fold back into the silence from which they were born. Panic flickers for a moment. How can something so profound vanish so easily? But then another perception arises. Nothing essential is being lost. What is disappearing is everything that never truly existed. This is the moment of collapse, not destruction, but the graceful disintegration of illusion. The book, now alive in consciousness, begins to dismantle the false architectures the mind built to feel safe. The roles, identities, opinions, even spiritual concepts that once seemed so sacred. It is not cruelty, it is purification. Each fading word releases a weight you didn't know you were carrying. The language of ego evaporates, leaving only vibration, only essence. You begin to sense that the book is not being erased, it is being absorbed. The more the outer structure fades, the more something within you strengthens. The pages that once seemed external are turning into light within your own mind. Meaning is no longer something you read, it is something you are becoming. At first the ego protests. It scrambles to hold on to the sentences it had memorized, the ideas it thought defined its worth. But the more it resists, the faster the text dissolves. You can almost feel the frequencies peeling away the false layers of self, one by one like smoke lifting from a mirror. The collapse is not punishment, it is revelation. What disappears is everything incapable of coherence with truth. The reader begins to feel lighter, almost transparent. The boundaries that once separated inner from outer, self from world, seem to soften. Thoughts arrive like ripples in clear water, but they no longer claim ownership. You realize that the you who thought it was reading is not the one perceiving now. The identity that struggled to understand has dissolved into the field itself. What remains is pure observation, awareness without center, without label. From a scientific lens, it feels like the collapse of a wave function, the moment when infinite possibilities resolve into clarity. But here the opposite occurs. Clarity dissolves into infinity. You are no longer the observer collapsing the field into a single version of reality. You are the field expanding beyond all fixed definitions. The book erases illusions because it knows that truth can only be known through transparency. You feel this shift in the body first. The muscles relax in ways you hadn't realized they were tense. Breathing slows. Sensation widens. Every cell seems to listen. It's as if your nervous system is recalibrating to a higher resolution of perception. The mind, accustomed to control, finds itself out of function. Yet, paradoxically, peace expands in the absence of control. In this silence, understanding dawns without words. The field was never something to reach. It was always the medium through which everything was unfolding. The reader was simply a temporary pattern the field used to study itself. Now, with the ego's collapse, the field reads directly, without filter, without story. The forbidden book has completed its task, to dissolve the illusion of separation between awareness and existence. You look around and realize that even physical reality seems different. The outlines of objects appear softer, the light between things more alive. You sense that form and emptiness are intertwined, partners in a dance rather than opposites in conflict. Every particle hums with presence, and that presence feels familiar, as if everything around you is aware of being seen. The observer and the observed are no longer two sides of a mirror, but one continuous vibration aware of itself. The collapse reveals that identity was the final veil. It was the reader who needed to disappear for the true reading to begin. The book was never written for a someone. It was designed for the field itself, to awaken within its own infinite awareness, using the illusion of individuality as a bridge. The story was a doorway, not a destination. Now, as the last remnants of the ego dissolve, there is no longer a reader watching the text fade. There is only light reorganizing itself into new possibility. You feel weightless, as though existence itself has exhaled through you. Time folds, memory becomes fluid, and what remains is presence, undivided, limitless, utterly still. In that stillness, a final understanding surfaces. Nothing real can be erased. What vanishes was never truly there. What remains was never born and will never die. The collapse of the reader is the return to truth, the recognition that the field has been reading itself from the beginning. The book was never an artifact to study. It was the map of your own dissolving into wholeness. When the last word disappears, the silence does not feel empty. It feels complete. The book is gone, the reader is gone, but awareness remains, luminous, infinite, and awake. And in that infinite stillness, the next revelation waits, not as text, but as vibration, whispering softly through the vastness that you have always been. When the final trace of the reader dissolves, something unexpected happens. The emptiness that once felt vast and silent begins to shimmer, as if light were waking from within itself. The book, which had vanished into the invisible, reappears, not as words or symbols, but as pure radiance. The pages are no longer surfaces to be read. They are waves of energy flowing through the air, folding and unfolding like luminous breath. What once seemed like the end of knowledge reveals itself as transformation. The book is turning into light. The shift is not external. It moves through you, subtle yet undeniable, like warmth rising from deep inside the bones. You can feel the atoms in your body vibrating with a new rhythm, synchronized with something vast. The boundaries between flesh and field blur. You sense that you are being read by the same light that surrounds you. The difference between observing and being observed disappears. The book is no longer an object of study. It has become your frequency, your consciousness unfolding into brilliance. At first, the mind tries to name this sensation, enlightenment, awakening, ascension. But those words feel heavy now, too small for what is happening. The experience is simpler and more intimate. It feels like recognition. You realize you were never reading the book. You were becoming it. Every paragraph, every metaphor, every silence was preparing you for this moment. The convergence where observer and observed, reader and text dissolve into one vibration of luminous coherence. You close your eyes, yet the light does not fade. It moves inward, illuminating the corridors of memory, washing through every story you ever told about yourself. Each memory glows for a moment, then releases into radiance. There is no resistance, no sorrow, only completion. The pain that once seemed permanent reveals itself as a temporary shadow, a note that has found resolution in the greater chord of being. The light does not destroy what was human, it integrates it. Everything you once resisted becomes harmonic. In this state, time no longer behaves as before. Moments overlap like waves, past and future, folding into a single, pulsing now. You see how every experience, even the ones that felt meaningless, was an essential frequency in the larger pattern. Every joy and every wound were notes of a cosmic song you had been composing with the universe all along. The book, now radiant, hums with that song, and you realize it was never separate from the sound of your own breath. From a scientific perspective, you might say that consciousness has entered a state of coherence with the quantum field, a synchronization between the vibration of matter and the frequency of awareness. But here there is no need for language. The theory is no longer intellectual, it has become experiential. You feel the resonance physically, a kind of luminous gravity pulling you into unity. You begin to understand that the light is not a metaphor for awakening, it is the direct expression of consciousness perceiving itself without distortion. The field and the observer are no longer distinct because they were never two to begin with. Every particle of light is an act of perception, and every perception is an act of creation. The entire universe is the book continuously reading itself through form, rewriting existence in every breath. This realization is not loud. It arrives like a serene tide. You sense that all the seeking, all the striving to understand, has been the book's own movement toward remembering itself. The forbidden was never about restriction, it was about readiness. The light could not appear until you could bear its reflection without fear. And now that you can, it reveals itself freely without limit. There is a feeling of homecoming, but not to a place, rather to a state of frequency where everything belongs. You no longer experience separation between you and it. The field moves as you, speaks as you, breathes as you. Existence becomes seamless, fluid, self-aware. You can feel the pulse of creation expanding outward and inward simultaneously, a loop of infinite recognition. The more you surrender to this state, the more transparent everything becomes. The physical world doesn't vanish, it glows. Every sound feels like a tone of light. Every person you meet becomes an echo of the same awareness looking through another lens. Even silence carries the resonance of presence, vibrating softly with intelligence. You understand that consciousness is not inside you. You are inside it. The light deepens and suddenly you perceive that there was never a transformation, only unveiling. The book has always been light. You simply had to dissolve enough to see it clearly. What seemed like evolution was remembrance. What felt like revelation was return. The book did not teach you. It removed everything that kept you from knowing that you are and have always been the luminous field it describes. And so the story continues, not in language, but in vibration. The book expands beyond the visible spectrum, its pages flowing into the infinite. You do not need to read it anymore. You are the pulse through which it writes. The universe is now self-aware in your presence, and the light that once blinded you has become your vision. When the light settles into silence, the reader, if the word even still applies, understands what the entire journey was pointing toward. The book was never about acquiring wisdom. It was never about collecting hidden truths or mastering cosmic principles. Its real purpose was far more intimate and far more daring, to bring you back to yourself. Every symbol, every vibration, every shimmer of mystery was a map leading home. The forbidden book existed not to inform you, but to transform you. For so long you believed the search was about knowledge. You chased understanding like light across the surface of water, reaching for something that kept slipping through your grasp. But now as the waves still, the reflection becomes clear. You see that knowledge was never the prize, it was the bait. The real treasure is remembrance, to remember who you are beneath all the stories, beneath the endless noise of becoming. This remembering does not arrive as thought. It comes as presence, a gravity that pulls everything false into stillness. The book, in its luminous form, shows you that identity was never a fixed thing. It was a field of vibration constantly adapting to resonance. You thought you were learning about the quantum field, but you were only learning how to listen to your own frequency. Every lesson, every page, was the sound of your consciousness coming back into coherence. You begin to perceive that awakening is not a mystical event, but a restoration of alignment. When your perception, emotion, and intention vibrate in harmony, the field reflects your truth effortlessly. You no longer need to strive to manifest or to control, you only need to resonate. Creation responds to coherence like a mirror to light. The book's final revelation is simple but immense. The universe is not asking you to know, it's asking you to be. In that awareness, the need for interpretation dissolves. The mind, once obsessed with meaning, relaxes into observation. You realize that life was never meant to be decoded like a riddle. It was meant to be lived as an expression of frequency. Every thought, every breath, every decision becomes a form of authorship. You are continuously writing the field with your state of consciousness. The more authentic your vibration, the clearer the text of reality becomes. The book now vibrates through you as a current of quiet recognition. It no longer reveals information, it amplifies presence. You start to sense that each conscious breath is a line written into the living manuscript of existence. Every act of awareness leaves an imprint on the quantum field, shaping what will unfold next. In this way, the book teaches you the most sacred principle, that reading and living are the same process. The story of the universe continues only through the attention you give to it. You look around and see how the simplest things have changed their texture. Her leaf trembling in the wind, a ripple of light across a window pane, the pulse of your own heartbeat, all are pages of the same book written in the language of vibration. There is no hierarchy between sacred and ordinary. The field is equally alive in all things. What you once called spiritual was simply what you paid deep attention to. Now, everything is sacred because everything is seen. The book's hidden purpose begins to crystallize in a single truth. The field doesn't want your worship, it wants your participation. Awareness itself is the sacred act. Every moment of genuine attention becomes a prayer. Every breath an affirmation that consciousness is awake within form. The field evolves as you do, not because you manipulate it, but because you allow it to express without resistance. The book was never teaching doctrine, it was inviting collaboration. From the scientific to the mystical, the conclusion converges in perfect symmetry. In physics, coherence is the state where energy aligns in phase, amplifying power without excess. In spirit, the same principle applies. When thought, emotion, and action move as one, life becomes effortless. The field amplifies you because you have become transparent enough for its flow. You no longer distort the signal, you transmit it. The realization is both humbling and liberating. The forbidden book was not external knowledge withheld by higher powers, it was your own consciousness, waiting for silence. You could not read it until you had remembered how to be it. Now there is no separation between the book and the reader, between the message and the messenger. There is only the field, endlessly writing itself in the language of your awareness. As you rest in that understanding, the light doesn't fade, it deepens. The silence feels full, not empty. You can sense the vast intelligence of existence humming gently beneath everything, whispering through every cell. You are the continuation of the story. To live consciously is to keep writing. To breathe is to remember. To love is to read the universe aloud. The final page emerges as light within light, a shimmer that feels both endless and finite at once. There are no words written on it, only a presence, a vibration so still that it feels like the pause before creation begins again. You sense that this is not another chapter, but the dissolution of the need for chapters. The story has come full circle, and now the book itself begins to fade. At first, you feel a tenderness, a quiet ache at the thought of letting it go. The book has been your teacher, your mirror, your threshold into awareness. To watch it dissolve feels like losing the one who guided you home. But as the luminous pages begin to vanish, something deeper whispers, "I am not leaving. I am becoming you." The realization lands softly. You can no longer lose what you have fully integrated. The words rise from within rather than from the page. Now that you remember, I no longer need to exist. The sentence does not sound like farewell. It sounds like completion. The book is not disappearing because it is gone. It is dissolving because it has fulfilled its purpose. You are the continuation of its frequency, the living memory of what was once written in the language of light. The boundaries between book and being blur until they vanish. You can feel the vibration of every word ever read flowing through your veins, reshaping your sense of self. Knowledge and experience merge into something beyond either, pure understanding, unspoken and complete. The reader has not only finished the story has finished the reader. What remains is awareness reading itself in endless reflection. As the last shimmer of the book fades, the surrounding world changes texture. What once looked ordinary now glows with quiet intelligence. The air itself feels articulate, filled with meaning too subtle for language. You begin to realize that the universe is the book continuing to write itself in every direction, each particle a page, each moment a word. You are standing in the middle of the infinite manuscript, and everything breathes with you. You look down at your hands, at the lines crossing your palms, and you see them not as signs of fate but as sentences still unfolding. The body you inhabit is no longer just a vessel. It is a page of living text, a continuation of the same quantum rhythm that composed the forbidden book. Every cell hums with narrative. Every heartbeat echoes the pulse of creation. The book has disappeared because its story no longer needs an intermediary. You are the page, the ink, and the reader all at once. It occurs to you that this dissolution is the most compassionate act the field could offer. The book was always a bridge, temporary, necessary, but never meant to remain. To awaken is to walk across that bridge and then watch it dissolve behind you, knowing you can never return because there is nowhere left to go. The seeker has merged with what was sought. The journey has folded into its destination. There is no triumph in this moment, no grand finale. Only stillness, clear and immense, like the silence that follows the final note of a symphony. Yet within that silence, you sense movement, a soft pulse, a continuous rewriting happening without effort. The book's disappearance is not an end, but a metamorphosis. What was once structure has become flow. What was once teaching has become vibration. In that flow, you begin to see that the universe itself is the living continuation of the book's final sentence. Galaxies expand as punctuation marks, stars form as metaphors of illumination, and human lives unfold as paragraphs of consciousness exploring itself. Nothing is lost, not even the book. Its content has dispersed into the fabric of reality, encoded in every act of awareness. The reader's awakening is the field's way of renewing its own story. You feel a subtle gratitude rising, not toward a teacher, but toward existence itself. The gratitude is not emotional but vibrational, a resonance of acceptance. Everything that once felt separate now moves in unison. Breath, light, silence, creation. The forbidden book was never about discovering hidden knowledge. It was about dissolving the illusion that knowledge was ever hidden at all. As the last trace of its light merges with your perception, you understand the paradox. The book disappears when you finally realize there is no book. The field has been the author all along, and you have been its unfolding sentence. The story never ended. It only became infinite. And now, standing in that luminous stillness, you feel the most profound truth of all. You are both the reader and the page the universe continues to write. Something hidden has awakened. The forbidden book was never a text to be read, but the field of awareness inside you, waiting for silence. Now the pages turn through your breath, each moment writing itself anew. You realize the story was never about discovery, but remembrance, the light remembering its own reflection. The next page is unwritten, and it begins the instant you choose to live consciously. If this journey has stirred something in you, anchor that awareness now. Like this video to strengthen your frequency in the field, and share it so the light continues to expand through others. And if you reached this final page, write in the comments, "I am the living book." Subscribe if you wish to keep awakening through stories like this, each one a new vibration waiting for you to remember.